Got it.
Okay, hey everybody. I'm here. I'm Shari, and this is Chad the alcoholic, and we're going to talk about stuff.
Hello. Yeah, we don't know what we're going to talk about.
No, we don't. We're just flying by the seat of our pants.
I kind of like when you were talking with Chris, he said, what did he say? The most mind-blowing conversation we could have is if we actually sat here and just said nothing.
Yeah, no, true. I mean, that might work better if you weren't wearing a mask, but
Yeah. Let's have a staring contest.
You're gonna win. I'm really bad at those. I could never do it. when you're a teenager, everyone wants to do the staring contest.
Yeah.
And it's the worst when you're a teenager, and I wonder why. Like the people just don't know who they are, right? So when someone's staring at them, they don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah. I've never been good at the staring contest. The blinking thing, if you tell me I can't blink, man, I'm ready to be blinking.
Well, it wasn't the blinking so much, it was you can't laugh. And of course, I laugh all the time, right? Like it's just my go-to.
Oh, so. Yeah. Well, that's good. Laughing is great. I think that for me, for a long time, I actually was, I thought that this thing's funny.
I like it. Leave it. I like it when you're holding him. He needs that.
Laughing, like, see, you get to get the laughs. I wish I had that. Once in a while, I will get that. And I know I had that at one point. And then I think the last time I remember really having some just no uninhibited belly laughs. I was in jail the last time for my fourth DUI, and I don't think I ever laughed more than when I was in jail, and I don't think the other guys did either. And I don't know if it was something about that was one of the things you couldn't really take from us, I guess. And so we would laugh over the most ridiculous things. And so yeah, it took me a while to at least into sobriety for me to
be able to laugh.
Yeah, to even get used to it, you know?
Yeah.
And I know it's coming. I mean, I've gotten a lot better with it. And because man, somebody like me, I could take myself so seriously, and I could take all of the problems of the world so seriously that I just think that there's, for lack of a better word, it's almost like a sin, to be so serious where I get separated from the childlike spirit that I so desperately need. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think that, the description that you gave of being in prison and being able to laugh with those guys, there's really something about a shared experience, right? That gives you the freedom to laugh about yourself. Mostly, I think most people are laughing at their own stupidity, right?
Yeah.
And at least that's my experience. And when you have a common experience with a group of people, you can laugh and you don't even have to really say much, they just get it, right? Because you're all in that same place, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I really love about married life. My wife and I, we can have a whole series of conversations in a matter of a blink of an eye, just looking at each other. And there's a whole sorts of conversations that are tied to this particular moment where we've noticed something, and then we'll look at each other and we'll just be whatever. And it could be any series of conversations. I don't know, there's something so interesting about the unsaid that I think, and the closeness that I have with her that I don't have with anybody else. And it's an amazing thing. I actually thought that was something that was never going to happen for me. So I never really knew. I never knew if I would ever be able to love really, or even know what that really was. And so yeah, I don't know how we got on that, but it's wonderful to be able to know somebody that way, you know. And so she helps me to practice laughing, you know. And we were at, it was fun. It was funny because we went to this church that I went to as a kid when I was like 15 and 16. We went up to visit my mom and my nephews and stuff for his birthday, and this just happened this weekend. And so we go up to this church, and we go there, and I tell her, I said, well, here's the thing. So we just started looking into churches together over the past several months. Okay. And so we decided, we did find one in town that we really like. And I mean, I really like this church a lot, and so does she. And so we're really excited about moving into that and seeing what'll happen with that. But and there's a lot of good stuff on the horizon there. Excuse me. I got the burp. Excuse me. So we go to this. So it's been kind of this thing where we wanted to check out together and go kind of explore these churches. And we go to this church over the weekend, this church that I went to when I was a kid. And I told her before going in, I said, I don't know what we're getting into, but it should be an adventure. And so we go in there, and they speak in tongues, and it was interesting. And so the first hour, they're literally playing music poorly for an hour. Oh, no. And we're just like, okay, we're having these looks at each other, and there's this one lyric comes through in the song. I don't even know what the name of the song is, but the lyric says, heaven will touch the earth like a sloppy wet kiss. Oh, and no. Yeah, she just starts cracking up, like, and she's crying, laughing. Oh, and I'm laughing because this is just the most absurd thing I've ever heard in a song in a church. And so that was pretty fun, but it was a weird experience, you know, because I don't think it's not a place that I would want to go to, but yeah, it's good to go, you know.
So this is not the place that you chose to attend?
No.
Okay.
No, this is a place that I went to as a kid.
I'm secretly happy about that.
Right. I mean, we were up there. We're like 3 hours from home, and I thought, it's Sunday. Why don't we just go and see because I haven't been there since I was like 17 or something. So I'm like, I don't know. Who knows? I've never
go check it out.
Yeah. And it was a little weird, but okay, it was a lot weird, but I don't know.
I've never heard a worship song describe the coming together of heaven and earth like a sloppy wet kiss. Oh my gosh.
There's actually let me see if I can find this.
It must be like someone local in the church must have written the song.
Yeah, this song is actually there's actually quite a bit of memes that are on this about this song that she found.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. There's a hilarious one. I was going to try and share on the shared content, but it won't let me do it. So.
Oh well, you wrote something on the Discord the other day about, I don't know if I can find it here or not, actually, because that was a couple days ago. But let me just see if I can find it here quickly.
Sure.
I think it was in promos. But there's a lot in promos right now. Shoot.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of these things that I'll write and I'll post, and probably, I don't know, it depends on where it lands, but they're just meditations. Did you find it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm going to read it, okay?
Okay.
It says, the further away, The further away from the active participation with the biblical religious story we've gotten, the more we lean on frightful blind assumptions about the religious story. The more we have an active participation with our shared assumptions, thus becoming an active participation with our prejudice. And that becomes the nun's work ethic. And this pattern is actually carried over to the secular materialist, even naturalist worldview. It's skepticism at the root of all worldview, utilizing minimal information and minimal participation with opposing views. The most egregious assumptions are at the foundation. They are ran through the game of telephone. Nobody wants to step in hot lava, so the old religious story or the straw man version of the religious biblical story becomes an evil to stay away from at all cost. To dodge being duped is somewhere near the top of the hierarchy. This too is how words and language have been hijacked. The mythological rumor when rumor becomes fact. All of the noise loud and piling hides us from him, but I believe he uses all things to reach us. And what is most vital for each of us is to participate over discussion. Discussion is good, but if that's as far as we're willing to go with our ideas, then we get caught in the prejudice trap. How best can I serve thee? When in my tile school, I learned much in reading and discussion about the history of tiles and the math of tile work and the products I'm to work with. But all this meant little until I started to work with it, to fail and succeed and grow in the field. Anyone who I hope I've been helpful and made sense. Looking forward to hearing back about your experience. So there's a couple things in here that I wanted to point out that I thought were, first of all, I had a question.
Sure.
The more we have an active participation with our shared assumptions, thus becoming an active participation with our prejudice. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So it's something, this whole idea came, this whole vision or whatever this is that I wrote came as thinking about how, how there's, how the game telephone works.
Yep.
And that's the idea. And I think that idea kind of, it's in everything. It's like, it's in the local news. It's about the people down the street. It's about the whatever, the state of the world, the state of the country, and I think it starts with the biblical stories. And the act of, what does it say? The active assumption, something like that.
The more we have an active participation with our shared assumptions, becoming an active participation with our prejudice. So the active participation that you're describing is what you would call the game of telephone? Yeah,
so the more that we run this game of telephone, and then I take the information you have, and then I start building my life on this information that you have, rather than my own actual experience with something.
Right.
And then I feed that back to you. This is my experience with the information that you gave me. And then these active assumptions becoming like, and usually they're never positive. So it's a lot of negative, I guess. I think it's like the negative feedback loop thing, but it's like in all of these areas of our lives. So this kind of becomes the nuns, like what I was, work ethic, where I'm not going to play them. And I'm just going to believe that I'm going to assume everything that's coming out of your mouth is bad and negative. And
bad and negative or bullshit?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I'm kind of fearful of it. So, and part of it, maybe I think it's partly true even. And so, it might be something that terrifies me. And I identify with some of that. And I think, well, kind of like I hate the discussion of the POS thing, because I think it's just I think it's not, I think a lot of us are doing this thing where we're talking past each other, and we're using little bits of our assumptions, which are the worst bits. And then we're building our arguments on that.
Right.
And so
how do you think, I mean, it's probably not optimal to just assume that everything that everyone is saying is negative, bad, or bullshit, right?
Right.
I mean, I have to say, I can relate to what you're saying.
Mhm.
because I decided that the only thing that I know is what I know,
Right.
not what you know. I can't know what you know, right?
Right.
So, and I did at one point in my Christian life, especially, find myself just repeating back everything that other people know.
Mhm.
And so I asked myself, okay, well, what do you know? Oh, hang on a second. I'm really old school. I have a landline.
That's fantastic.
And I don't have a cell phone.
That's great.
So I had to find out what I believed, but then I ran to the problem of having to find that out through other people.
Yeah.
Right? You got to read a book, even if it's the Bible.
Right.
I'm still faced with the same problem, right? I
Yeah.
can't just pull it out of the air.
Right.
So
That's why I think the theology thing, and I was talking with somebody about this right before this, I get a bad, I think first of all, I'm not great at articulating myself. So that's why I do things where I write stuff like this or poems, because to me, there's something I can understand what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it. And so,
yeah, I get that.
so yeah. And so it's like, sometimes I think more can be, in some ways, things can be more useful in a poem, because it's kind of like, it's kind of, for
Well,
me,
it's
yeah,
everything. It's everything. That's
yeah,
why.
right. It's not meant to be articulated. It's
Right.
kind of a sliding scale of, what do you think about this idea? And it's kind of
Yeah.
like, and then the artistic part of us, or at least for me, I get to thinking about those words, and I think, what does that mean to me? And so this is why I don't like theology, I guess, or the
Yeah.
idea, because I think it's asked in many ways. It asks me to take what you say and have that be a truth for me, and it
Yeah.
might be true, but it might mean more if I actually work with that tool, rather than just take your word for it, or take, whatever, Luther or Calvin or whoever the hell these people are, and take their assumptions as my truth.
Yeah.
And I think that's,
So maybe, sorry for interrupting.
No, it's okay.
Maybe what you're saying is that you have to live your life, right?
Right. I don't got any other choice.
You have to live. And then when you do that, your theology builds itself.
Yes.
It builds itself, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's on your experiences. As
Right.
and I'm assuming there that you're actually trying to follow God, like, so, and then also wrapped up in that assumption is that he's actually looking after you.
Yeah.
And
Otherwise,
teaching
why
you
would I
things.
continue?
Right. Yeah. And that's ultimately where I ended up. Like, when I don't know if you know, but like, I was a churchgoer for a number of years. And then at one point, both my husband and I, there was just a number of things that had happened in our lives with churches, different, various churches, that were really disheartening. And then we just both kind of looked at each other one day and said, we're done. We're done going to church. And I mean, we were also in a place where it was hard to go to church, because there was basically it was very remote, and there was just a small group of people who were Christians, and we decided not to go meet with them anymore. Otherwise, there was no other place to go. So we couldn't even switch churches, right? We just stopped. But we didn't stop being Christians.
Right.
We didn't deconstruct. We didn't become atheists or, hedonists or anything like that. We just stopped going to church. And that just continued on for 23 years. 23 years, we never went to church. And I'm still not going to church. I mean, I'm I was able during COVID to join in with a parish on Zoom for their what do you call it, liturgies, right, services. And they would have like a Zoom coffee hour afterwards, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And I was accepted during that time as a catechumen into the Orthodox Church, but I've never set foot in an Orthodox church. I've never been in an Orthodox church. I've never done anything Orthodox, you know. And the one thing I don't do is engage in, okay, well, what's their theology, right? Like, I'm not reading all the Orthodox theological books. Make sure that they got all their ducks in a row so that I can check off all my boxes and say, okay, I'm in agreement with everything. Because I can guarantee you that there's going to be things I won't be in agreement with. Everything, anything that you have to do or that you participate in, you have to make a compromise, I think. You're going to compromise something, even in AA. There's going to be one thing. There's going to be the one thing or the two things that you would like, all right, well, you know, the cost benefit is better. So I'm just going to, you know, do this, right?
Yeah, well, I found out a long time ago that there wasn't going to be a single AA meeting on the planet that was going to provide me with what I really wanted.
Right.
It was never going to happen because I can always find something that is lacking, as you said. And so one of the ideals or principles that I tried to adopt and even tried to continue, you know, knowing that I'm going to fall short of this, is there's never enough to bring.
Yeah.
You know, there's never enough of where I could be of service, and I'm going to fail at that, but I can never run out of how much I can try to be useful.
Yeah.
So, but I can run out like this on how much you can serve me.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's not, you know, if you're like me and you ain't got enough of it. You know, I want more, and the more you give me, the more I want, and that's in all these areas. And so, yeah, I mean, the church that my wife and I are looking at right now, it's a Lutheran church, and we really like the pastor. We sat with him for like 2 hours and talked with him, and I had like this really like the same kind of vibe I had in person with him as I get when I listen to Paul Vanderklay, and which I love Paul Vanderklay so much because I think he models the kind of Christian that I would like to be. And so if we join this church, sure, I'm going to be a member of a Lutheran church, but am I going to be a Lutheran? I don't give a shit about that. You know, and I don't think Luther did either. And you know, I don't know though. I'm assuming that it didn't really matter what we call it ourselves as much as how am I living my life? How am I trying to serve others and to serve God and to grow closer with God? Knowing that I will fail all along the way. It's like, that's my big beef with this stuff. It's like, man, there's so many conflicting verses and stuff. It's like, it's as if that it was never meant to be figured out.
Well, I think you're onto something there.
You know, it's impossible. So it's like the toiling, you know, stop toiling. It's like, I had an idea about.
Well, you know, the one thing we often forget is that God did give us the Sabbath, right? Why do you think he did? You know, like if you think about it in terms of what you just said, he obviously knew that we need to rest.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I know it's hard. Here, have a day off.
I can relate to that. You know, like so, like these things that I carved. Like there's like 8 of these that I carved, different shapes and stuff. And then before that, there was some watercolor paintings I did. And then before that, there was a bunch of songs that I had written.
Oh, cool.
And then after this, there was all these newscasts that I was making.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of guy where I'll just do it. And then I'm like really into it. And I'm like, oh, and I find that I'm good at it.
Yeah.
And then when I get to a certain point, I'm like, the fire's gone. You know, I'm glad I did these. These were a lot of fun. These are a cool piece of my experience. But and so are those songs, and so are those paintings, and so are these newscasts. But at the end of the day, what more is God trying to show me? Where more can I be, use these gifts and stuff? So yeah, I need to rest, because I will burn myself out. I did it with the news thing. I think I got pretty close to it, man. And I'm so obsessed. And really, it was about me. It wasn't about bridges of meaning. It wasn't a part of it. I will justify and say part of it was, but really it starts to become more about these people say they really like me. I really like that feeling. Yeah. And so, I'm honest, I'll be honest about those kinds of things. I have to be, especially if I'm going to say that, like I'm Chad the alcoholic. I'm a recovered alcoholic, a member of AA. I need to try and model as much honesty as I can with you guys, because this is, and so I'm full of all sorts of ego, tons of it.
Well, we all are. But there's an interesting other little ego at the bottom of it that says that, I've been talking about this recently. I think I talked about it. I think I talked about it with Chris. The idea of seeing your own nakedness, right? Mm-hmm. As an insufficiency. So like in your case, I have to stop doing that because of my ego, right? That's the thing that is going to make me stumble and fall. Mm-hmm. But I also think that, like, when we started talking about this, started this conversation, we talked about looking into our spouse's eyes and being known, right? Mm-hmm. And that is really what we want more than anything.
Yes.
And that can be perceived as egotistic, right? Mm-hmm. But I often think too that at the same time, God has given us that desire, because it's not only our desire, it's also His. He wants to be known. Right? Yeah. That's why He sent His Son to reveal Himself to us. Right. Hello. I mean, you could call that an egotistical move if you really wanted to frame it that way. Oh, so He's just going to show off. He's just going to wander around and show off and die and be resurrected. Like, you could do that. But that's not really what's going on. It's like I personally have always really loved the verse where in Corinthians where Paul says that one day we will know as we are known. And I take that to be more of the gospel than anything else, because I think that is what we deeply, deeply desire. And it's also what God deeply desires, right? To be known. I've heard it said that Jesus is the revealer. I think it's Origen that talks about that too. Jesus is the revealer. He reveals God, right?
Well, yeah.
But He also reveals us to ourselves.
Yes.
And I think sometimes that we get the closer. Okay, well, maybe I'll back up a bit. I also firmly believe, and this is something that Chris and I talked about, it's your responsibility to know who you are, or love yourself, or have compassion on yourself. It's your responsibility to God, actually, because He holds you in that much high esteem. He actually cares and loves and has compassion on you, right? Yeah. So to not equally do that for yourself is to be ungrateful, in my opinion.
Sure.
Anyway, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes.
So I guess what I'm getting at is that, because I've done the same thing, Chad, where I've often described myself as the jack of all trades and master of none, right? Because I'm really good at learning how. I'm very creative. I'm very open, so I want new challenges all the time. I'm looking for ways to express myself, and I'll do that, and then I'll just say, okay, and I get good at it. Like whatever it is that I want to really try to do, I get really good at it, and then right at that point, I go, all right, I'm done. Where's the next thing?
Yeah.
and I had to step back a little bit and say, why am I doing that? Mm-hmm. Right, and the Lord challenged me actually. And I started a thing, spinning, right? I started spinning wool.
Okay.
Learning how to spin wool and process fiber and the whole, like, that's me, right? Like, I'm like, raw fleece, how do I wash it? How do I dry it? How do I clean it? How do I, like, right from the get-go.
Yeah.
And got really good at it. And then I got the feel, like, I tried all these different techniques of spinning and plying, and I had drawers full of wool, and I'm like, okay, I'm good at this now. Now bored. And the Lord said, now you're going to master it. And I'm like, and then I realized that's the thing that really scared me, was becoming the master, right?
Sure.
So, because it involved discipline. It involved me doing it when I didn't want to.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, just a thought.
No, that brings up a lot. I mean, when I look at my experience with learning how to, let's say, create music, and that was like my first real love, was listening to music, understanding lyrics, understanding layers of music, and then learning how to create that. But one thing I never really wanted to do was learn somebody else's music. And so in order for me to hide from having to learn how to master somebody else's music, I would just create my own. And then I would get to a point where I really liked it and felt like it was good enough for me. And then I heard other people say they liked it. And then that made me get to a point where I didn't have to learn somebody else's or master somebody else's creations. And like, so it's the same thing with these things. If somebody was like, oh, you should carve this or this or this, and I'm like, nah, not really interested in that. And because I know I can't do it. Or I guess I feel like I know I couldn't do it. And if I did it, it wouldn't be done well. And so, a lot of my creative stuff, even when creating the news channel, I was immediately asking others if they would want to help out, because I didn't want to do it all. So it's like, some of that is shirking responsibility, and I can hide.
Well, I mean, maybe, but then again, it's also more fun to do it with other people.
It is. But like, say, learning, I did learn pieces of other people's music, and not entire pieces, but like little segments here and there. But it was a false humility, I guess. Like, like I'm gonna take this, and then somebody can say, I'm gonna create this piece, and then somebody can say that's so good, and and bring a tear to their eye, and I can say, oh, it ain't much, it ain't nothing. And that's just kind of how somebody like me operates sometimes. And but I mean, I slept on the music thing. I pick up the guitar now and again, and I'll doodle around and stuff. But what I think a miracle that did happen for me was I went from that being an idol to me, and a big piece of my identity, to eventually
falling away.
It doesn't mean much. I'd rather listen to somebody else's and really fall in love with somebody else's pieces of music, and be, and so am I shirking my spiritual responsibilities by not creating something for somebody else to get the same feeling I get when I hear somebody else's? I don't know. But this is the thing about, I think, the God is, this is why I think he uses all things, right? So maybe I might be turning away from him for years and decades and trying to deny him, but yet he's still finding his way of getting his seed in there a little bit, without me, where I'm thinking, no, it's not happening. No. But here he is, still growing something inside of me. And so I think it is on his time. And this is why I can't sit and fret about all this different stuff. I was having a discussion with my dad before this, and and we were talking about different stuff going on in the world, and I was just like, I'm not listening to the news. I'm not listening to what's going on out there. It's not my business.
Yeah.
What am I doing right here, right now? And, one thing that came to mind was when I was at that church thing this Sunday at that church I felt was strange. They were talking about he said something to the effect of, don't you remember the toilet paper loss of 2020? And he was talking about, to me, it sounded like we need to hold on to as much of this world as possible.
Yeah.
Because it's our job as Christians to do that. And I think, no.
No, I agree.
Take it all.
Let it
because
go.
if we really want the kingdom to come, look what happened between Palm Sunday and the crucifixion. It's like Jesus used that in a way that nobody could have suspected or predicted. I don't know, and it's tough to say these things to people because they think you're just nuts or like psycho or something for saying something. Like, if we want the kingdom of God to really come here, maybe we should just surrender everything that we think we know or we think we need to keep in this material world for our security.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be stuck in the dark and having to hunt my own food and not have a hospital right there and not have a cold shower. I don't want those things to happen, but does it matter what I really want?
Yeah. It's true. It's true. And that's interesting. I recently had a conversation with my youngest daughter, because there's been some stuff going on in our lives as a family, and at one point she wanted to talk about it and asked me how I was handling things, and I said, well, the way I see it as a Christian, I'm just supposed to die, with all my assumptions, like you're talking about in this post, right? All my presuppositions, all my needs, all my wants, even my physical body one day, right? Mm-hmm. Which if I really think about it, I don't have any rights in that case. I don't, right? Mm-hmm. And then she said, well, I'm not sure if that's the answer. I mean, you need to look after yourself. You need to think about yourself, And I said, well, I am actually. And it's just so counterintuitive, to the world, right? Because by not putting myself first in that way, I'm actually giving myself the best opportunity to be more like Christ, mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So I am thinking about myself in that regard,
Yes.
But they want you to hold on to yourself, like you were saying, like that guy in the church. They want you to hold on to the world, right? Hold on to it. Don't let it go, because if you do, you might just get sucked downstream, and then what, right?
Right. Yeah, I was having a discussion with somebody, and so just a couple hours ago, I got the first vaccine shot, and I did that, and we've talked about this.
Yeah,
I did this for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was looking at my experience overall now is one of the idols I have is I ain't getting that damn shot. That's an idol to me. That was an idol to me.
Yeah.
And I ain't getting that damn shot because I know. And so part of the surrendering of the idol is, for me, is I don't know. And the other thing was I had this discussion with my wife, and we're newly weds, and we're trying to have kids, and maybe it was bad. I don't know, but it sure feels good to not have to hold on to the idol of I ain't getting that damn shot.
Yeah.
And the discussion I had with this other person, he said, you'll have to put a bullet in my head before you put that shot in my arm. And I thought, fine, if that's how you want to be, that's okay. I mean, maybe you're right and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm right and maybe you're wrong, or maybe we're both right and we're both wrong.
Yeah, you just don't know.
Because at the end of the day, what's stopping me from being of love and service to those about me? And like that's the big thing, because I can get caught in the ideology of my own thinking and my own assumptions, as we were saying, like, I ain't getting that damn shot because I ain't getting it.
Right.
Why? Because I don't know, for whatever reason, doesn't matter. But I noticed that in me, it was a bit of an idol. And I know when we first talked about it, it touched a nerve on me, because I was like, you had me questioning some stuff about myself. And, that's good. That's good. But yeah, it's tough because I don't want to. I've been the guy who has thought and felt like, you'll have to put a damn bullet in my head before before you do this to me. And to me, the problem is, before you do this to me, that's the problem.
Yeah, that is the problem. Yeah, I agree.
And so that to me that to me would be a problem for living life how I find to be a free and useful life. And hey, if I if I become Magneto because I had the damn shot and whatever crazy stuff happens, who cares? It's like you said, we can't live forever ever. Could you imagine if we all lived forever? This place would be a damn mess.
Well, that's why everyone's getting the shot, actually. I'll just throw that in there, because they think they want to live forever. I remember spending a couple of years ago quite a bit of time digging into a guy named Father John Bear, and he does a number of talks on death and the lack of awareness of death in our culture, and in our, especially our Western societies. He talks about how 100 years ago people were faced with death all the time. They probably saw their siblings die. They probably attended a funeral once a month because they had large families, and people were dying all the time.
The dead body was right in their home.
And it was right there. It was right there. It was all laid out, and it was a regular thing, right? And so they knew how to navigate death. And he makes a really good point, I think, about how we just, he said that they even have pink lights in the funeral homes so that when they shine on the person's face, they look alive, right? And people say things like, he's never looked so good.
Yeah, really.
Right?
Actually.
And I mean, nowadays, you're even lucky if you see a body in a coffin. You're just going to get an urn or just maybe a photograph in a church, right? Yeah. That's it. And you're not going to talk about their death or the fact that they're gone. You're going to talk about their life instead, right?
Right.
And Father John Bear posits that's one of the worst developments in our collective psychology is the loss of death in our cultures, right? And then he makes the point that Jesus said, when Jesus says, if you save your life, you will lose it, right? But if you lose your life for my sake, you'll be saved. And what he says with that there is that this forever, this longevity thing this dragon that we're chasing, right, is making us lose our life. And I was listening to him saying these things before COVID hit.
Yeah. And
then COVID hits, and I'm watching all these people just going slam, 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 slam. Doors and windows all over the world just slam. Mm-hmm. And then there's this giant silence. And I'm like, oh my God, they just lost their lives. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to save their lives, and in doing so, they've lost them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was just really clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not judging anybody. I'm just looking at it from a you know, the way that he was explaining it, and the what I was looking at, you know, they just came, they were so close together that it was just obvious to me what was happening. And I think everyone has to make the choice for themselves whether or not they want to get the vaccination. And some people have every reason to get the vaccination, every reason, you know. So yeah, but I wanted to go back to this here, because there was another thing in here that I thought was interesting, because you talked about just sitting in a classroom situation and learning about tiles, for example.
Yeah.
Right. And then you compared that with actually going out and tiling.
Yep.
You know, in essence. And one of the things that's really been on my mind for the last little while is, you know, there's a lot of intellectual discussion and conversation on the Discord, right? About ideas, which I love. I could talk about those things all day long, you know, but like you say here, there's no, they're nothing until you embody them, basically. It's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I've been thinking about is, geez, this is what John Vervaeke's been saying for a long time. He's like, practices, people, we need practices. You know, I don't care what they are, just do them. Circling, floating in the air, you know, like, just do something, you know?
Right.
And then I thought, well, that, you know, that it makes so much sense that Chad would say something like that, because that's what AA is about.
Oh yeah.
You know, if somebody goes to AA and they're not practicing the AA dogmas, they're not getting anywhere.
It says explicitly that the spiritual life is not a theory we have to live in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way that I think about these things is I end up going down this, okay, so there's a mind-body connection going on here, right?
Okay.
And I just wondered what, you know, if you've given that any thought, like, not, you don't have to get philosophical or anything, but I'd like to hear, you know, in light of AA and your job and what you just said in this post, and, you know, you start the whole thing about the whole post, you start with the words participation.
Yeah.
Right. So like, it's almost like there's this subliminal messaging coming through, like maybe that you're not even aware of, right? But that's just screaming embodied.
Well, the title of the post is The Further Away.
Right.
And that's the participation I think that we're most used to having. Is getting further away.
Getting further away. Okay.
And participating with getting further away by talking about ideas. That's the participation that's the trouble, I think.
Well, that actually fits in really well with my what I just said about death.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
You're getting, you know, let's just talk about their life, right? You get further away by doing that.
Yes.
Okay.
So cool. The thing with tile is you could read all this stuff and know how to lay out a floor and know what Pythagorean theory is, and you could know what waterproofing is, and but nothing is going to prepare you for the hump in the floor that you can't see until you're on top of it, you know, and nothing is going to prepare you for, you know, the little nails sticking up, or like if you haven't planned ahead, nothing's going to prepare you for. You've done the layout, but now you got a little 2-inch tile over here along the side of the wall here, and it's not really what you want. So it's participation. And the thing with the AA stuff is my whole life I've been very disciplined on my own prejudice, right? And so I love this word, prejudice. excuse me, I learned this in AA, where if I find a word and I think I know what it means, I should look it up and then be happily surprised by what I find.
Right.
And so what I found with the word prejudice is it meant to have an opinion of something, and it's not rooted in actual fact or experience. And so I've used this example of sardines. I've heard sardines are bad. This is the process that I wrote about here. I heard sardines are bad. So then I tell others that sardines are bad. And I really believe this, but I've never had a sardine.
Yeah.
So I've not had my own experience with this stuff. And it's so simple and silly. So my whole life is, before I was offered the steps, as a series of basically a series of prejudice that have been stacked up and built who I am. So I'm more built by my prejudice rather than built by my own interaction with the world.
Yeah.
And so what the steps had me do is they had me set aside what I think I know, and then go and do some work, like some literal work, and write down some stuff about my experience, and try to be as objective as I can about my experience with the world and my place in it. And I look at that, and then I outgrow fear by sharing that with another person, which is terrifying, because if I tell you that this lady at my church had me come and clean out her garage, and she was going to pay me to do it, and I did. I cleaned it out, but then I also stole a box of old coins and dollars. I can't tell you that because I'm terrified you're never going to want to have me around.
Yeah.
So then I tell you this stuff, right? And then I get to find out that, oh, you might have did something like that too. And God loves us anyways. And then I try to clean up the past, and I make amends for those things. That's a participation in my life. That's coming up against the hump in the floor that I can't plan for. Right? I have to actually walk through that. And then I have to do this other stuff like daily observing of where I am. That's what the 11th step is. And I wouldn't care if the 11th step said, go to the end of the block, jump up 3 times, and tap your finger on the stop sign and walk back. If that was the discipline it took for me to do, I think just going through the discipline in itself would be something that I don't know why it would exactly work. Sometimes I don't know why any of this stuff works, but maybe it's the actual adhering to a discipline. That's the humbling experience that stretches me. It makes me more open to having actual experience.
Yeah, see, this is the thing that I find really fascinating, right? Like that example that you just gave, I find is a really good example. Like, you know, if you were to say, like, you know, it's logical that if you sit down and write out confessions, let's say, or you become vulnerable to another person, or for accountability purposes, those are logical steps that encourage you to change, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But to run down the block and touch a stop sign 3 times and run back, that doesn't indicate logically that there should be any kind of change in your life, right?
Right.
So where's the change happening? And I would, I mean, just off the top of my head, I would think it's kind of like the wishing upon a star thing that Peterson talks about when he talks about Pinocchio, right?
Right.
It's you knowing that you can't do it on your own, that you actually need the stop sign.
Right.
You need the sidewalk, you need the stop sign, and
you need the star.
You need, right. You need the star, right?
Because praying isn't logical.
Right.
There's nothing logical about it.
Telling God something he already knows and asking him to do something that God only knows if he'll do.
Yeah. Like, and I've never actually seen him with my eyes. But, and it's just, who knows, man? It's like, that's the surrender of my will and my.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough because it's like.
Well, it's like following your heart. Like I have an image of you following your heart as you run down that sidewalk towards the stop sign. Yeah. That's kind of what you're doing, right? You're no longer in here because none of it is logical. It's this that wants to touch that stop sign.
Well, I know what is logical. failure of my past experience, that is logical.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that should be enough for me to know that I need to practice some respect for my position. And maybe that means taking and doing illogical things.
Yeah.
And that's where the changes happen. It changes me from the inside out, because I'm like, I don't know. They said pray. Why? I don't know. It seems to work for them.
Yeah.
But maybe if I do that, maybe something will change inside me, which it did. And then it changed more. And then I was on that particular ride for like 5 years. And then that expanded more. Mm-hmm. And then so God used through every bit of this in ways that people would say, that's not God because it's not biblical.
Yeah.
Really? I don't know. For some reason, God used Edgar Casey to get my attention.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't know why that worked, but it worked until it worked more, and then it worked different. So.
Yeah.
And maybe God used those moments of my rigid thinking of where I was practicing prejudice. He was working with me right where I was.
Yeah.
And go ahead, son. If you got to hit the wall, do it. Go.
Yeah.
Because you're not, there's nothing I can say that's going to change your mind. And then I get to a point where he shows up in a way that is so real that I can't even explain it. And it is not logical. And there's no way to explain it other than if you've experienced it, then you know what I'm talking about.
I watched Tucker Carlson last night, and he has this new show, Tucker Carlson Today, where he has these long form interviews with people.
Yeah.
And he had, so for his newscast last night, instead of being in the studio, he was in that little news studio that he has. And he just showed clips of conversations he had with different people. And he showed a clip of a conversation he had with John Voight.
Okay.
And John Voight was talking about how God basically got his attention the very first time. And he said he was in this cabin and he was losing his family. He was losing his mind. He was losing the battle with addiction. He had all these things going on. And he was laying on the floor and he was crying, and he said, I just kept saying, this is so difficult. This is so difficult. And then he said, just out of nowhere, this voice in my ear said, it's supposed to be. And he was like, what? But he said, who would have ever thought that would be helpful, right? To say to somebody. But he said it was.
I find that helpful.
Yeah. He said all of a sudden he got up and he was like, wait a minute, it's supposed to be? Okay. Yeah. And it just, when you were talking about Edgar Casey, God does meet us right exactly where we are, right? Mm-hmm. And he doesn't use it like a tool. He shows us. It's like, open your eyes, right? He shows us something that we never noticed before.
Yeah.
That's what he does. And I like to think that as an unveiling, right?
Yes.
Because it's not that it wasn't there. It's just that, oh, there it is,
Right. Yeah. So I don't necessarily agree with, I don't think the Edgar Casey thing will work on me today.
Probably not.
Right?
Not now.
Right. But it works on me looking back at my experience, and I can say, oh, that's how God works. Now the Edgar Casey itself thing, I don't know. I don't even know what about it worked other than I was willing to listen to something about Edgar Casey. So boom, God worked in that way. So it's just so strange. There's a line when you were saying that thing about John Voight. There's a line in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says that God doesn't make too hard of terms for those who earnestly seek him. Right? It doesn't say that God doesn't make hard terms. It said God doesn't make too hard of terms for those who earnestly seek. So it's going to be hard sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be too hard.
No.
You know, if I earnestly seek him, and it's like, well, if you're a guy like me, what the hell is him?
Yeah.
You know, because I'm unwilling on my prejudice and my ideas about what I think Christianity is, and those weirdos over there. I wasn't willing. I mean, I was spent like 6 years at least. My skin would bristle every time I heard the word Savior. It would make my skin crawl. I would go to church once in a while because I liked what I was hearing there. But when that pastor would say, you know, you need to have him be your savior, or you can't get to heaven without him, I would get up and I'd walk out, because I would think, how do you know? You know, I look back and I think, okay, I can see what you're saying. But right at that moment, I couldn't see. But it was when I was willing to see it, you know, and do the hard thing and try to be stretched a little bit. That's where he met me. You know, and I heard too that this great silly saying, it's like, prayer only works for those who want it to work. You know, it's like, that's so simple. Like, well, yeah, if you don't want it to work, why would you be doing it in the first place? You know, but if you really wanted it to work on some level, then it would work. Well, then I had to reframe what my whole understanding of what prayer was. Prayer was about asking God to give me the strength to be useful to others, period. End of story. There's no in between there. So my prayer is always between me and God, and how I could be useful to his kids. That's it. I don't, you know, and it often looks like, God, please help me get out of the way so I can be useful to your kids. Because God, please remove this insanity in my thinking, or this self-centered fear. Please remove this so that I can be useful. But then I have to actually get out and try and act like you removed it. You know, so like, you know, prayer is kind of like, somebody shared with me, prayer is like 10% on my knees and 90% on my feet.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was just going to say, like, you were talking before about this transformation that's happening that you're not even aware of, right? And I mean, even through your own struggle with addiction, or even if, like, you just had a bad cold, when suddenly you go, oh, I can sniffle again, you know, I can breathe. Oh, there's a transformation happening.
yeah.
You know, it's like, duh. Like, you don't know until suddenly you realize, right? And I think those are the best transformations. Then the ones where you're trying so hard to transform yourself, it's like, you're not going to get rid of your sinus infection by thinking about it, you know? You have to rest. You have to do the practices. You got to rest. You got to drink tea. You got to, you know, whatever it takes, right? And let the transformation happen. That's what it is, right? But just that laying in bed and thinking about how much you want those sinuses to clear up, it's just going to frustrate you.
It might. But then there's another part of that I would say I think is very important, that excuse me, if that's all you have today, don't stop doing it.
No, of course not.
Because sometimes it needs to be just that. Because sometimes I ain't buying what I'm saying either. And like I've said before,
you got to reach the end. You got to reach the end of the thing, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like I'm just praying to the paint on the wall, and that's okay.
That's
because I still need to go through the practice of it for some reason. Because if I give up that this ain't working, then I ain't doing it. If I give up there, then what's the point? So I should just because I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling that transformation. That's what happened to me. I mean, it was like 6 years of I ain't feeling this transformation. I'm feeling something that's changing, and something has helped me get out of the way so I could be useful. But and I know it's God, but it ain't Christ. I know that much. That's what I would think. And then one day it was like, okay, I'm willing to look for Christ.
Right.
And then boom, he was there.
Yeah.
And then I find out it was him the whole time. And then, but if I would have gave up at, well, this ain't working how I think it
Yeah,
needs
the
to
thing
work.
is though, Chad, I wonder how much of the giving up you actually could have done, you know? Like, it seems like you were well on your way. Like
But
this,
I say this for somebody out there who might be thinking that they're willing to give up right now. It's like,
yeah.
don't be so tied to your ideas about what you think God should show up and how he should show up. Sometimes
again,
going through the motions.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree, but I will push back a little bit.
Okay.
Because sometimes giving up is like we think of giving up as not being a good thing, right? And I don't think it's a good thing. Like, I don't think people should give up on things. But like, I'm thinking specifically here when I'm talking about this of the myriad of people who are going through these deconstruction things, right, as Christians. And a lot of people think, well, that's horrible. That has to stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, sometimes that's the death that precedes the resurrection. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Then my pushback on that would be there's a difference between deconstructing and totally dismantling and throwing it all out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean. If you got to deconstruct away, but don't stop seeking him.
Yeah.
Whatever him is. That's what.
Well, I mean, though, Chad. I mean, the prodigal son did lay with the pigs and eat whatever they were eating, right? Like,
yeah,
he was pretty low until he realized. And sometimes that's unfortunately where some people need to go.
Oh yeah.
They need, you talk about hitting rock bottom, right? Or hitting the wall or whatever it is, because they've spent their whole life thinking that they were the master of their own destiny, right? Really was what it is, what that is. And I mean, and I have people like that in my life that I worry about because I see them headed right for the pit, right? And I just hope they survive. Yeah. That's really what I'm hoping for,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, then you have Legion, which that's the story that changed me. Right. Legion, he's the lowest of the low. Mm-hmm. He shouldn't be living amongst the dead, because in that time, like, if you even touched a dead body, you had to like take a week away, and they had to wash you and clean you. And but he's living there, and he's living on a pig farm, as like you were saying with
prodigal son.
With the prodigal son. So this Legion, the lowest of the low, nobody can hold him, right? Nobody can keep him chained. He's cutting himself with stones, and he has no hope. And here comes this Jesus guy right across the sea and meets him when he's at his end. And he says, what am I supposed to do with you? And he calls him by his name, which I thought was so weird. He called Jesus by his name. And he never met the guy. And he says, and I know that there's theologians out there who say why he knew Jesus's name and stuff. And even the devil knows Jesus Christ's name and stuff like this. But for me, when I heard that, I thought, well, yeah, I know his name too, but I don't know him.
Right.
And then, but he meets him, and he says, what am I supposed to do with you, Christ? And I had the same question. And then he just changes him. He heals him right then and there. Yeah. Like I don't know. He was at the end too. But here this Jesus dude comes over the ocean. And he just watched this guy change the storm to nothing. Yeah. And that's crazy to me. So I don't know. Mythological, who knows? All I know is that story flipped me. I couldn't argue with it. And it also told me I didn't have to figure out the rest of the story to believe and to know him.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of circles back to what we started talking about, was being known, right? Like he knew Jesus, and Jesus knew him,
Mhm.
and this is something that I think most people who have an encounter with God could attest to, is this feeling of being known, right? Of feeling known and understood. And our ability to know God is limited, but there's a familiarity there. It's a home. It's home. It's like I'm home,
Yeah. There's something really strange about the knowing,
Yeah.
because I can't describe it. Here's another way I can talk about knowing. So there have been many times in the past in my drinking where I would say out loud and think that I meant it, that I never wanted to drink again.
Mm.
And then I would drink again.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a time that came where I knew that I could never drink again, and I meant it. And it was set in my heart, knowing I could never do this ever again. And then I would do whatever it took to have that stay real in my heart. There's a difference. And so it's very similar to knowing God in the one way, and then all of a sudden knowing Christ in this other way. There was a difference.
Yeah.
And so that's nothing. I didn't do anything at all in either case. Right? I didn't do anything to convince myself that I could never drink again. It showed up. Boom, there it was. That was a conceding to my innermost self. And I knew that was 100% fact, and it was true in every way possible.
Yeah.
Just like knowing Christ was something like I didn't think my way into that. It just, here you are. And
yeah.
so we could talk about all the theology in the world. We could talk about this and that, and we could do all the practices in the world. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, it's been my experience that the most vital changes that have happened, like knowing that I wanted to marry my wife.
Right.
That was something I knew. Like there was no question there.
Yeah.
Like these things are, there was nothing yes.
It's intuitive.
It came from within. It didn't happen. I didn't manage that. I didn't, it's so at the end of the day.
And it's probably, most of it isn't even logical.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Right. It's beyond reason. And it's beyond rationality.
Yeah. No, you could rationalize it away probably most of the time.
Yeah.
But except for the fact that you actually have this deep intuition, this deep feeling that keeps you in this place.
Yeah.
And I think this is what Ian McGilchrist is really kicking at. I don't know if you've listened to him at all.
Not yet.
He talks about the right and left hemispheres.
Yes.
And the right hemispheres being the master, and the left being the emissary, but the left being overinflated because it feels like it's the master. Right. And it's the more, logical, rational part of our brain.
Yes.
Whereas the right is the more intuitive part of our being. And I just talked about this the other day, when people think that they do things because they've thought them through, but they actually mostly do them because they feel good, or they feel right, or they feel whatever. They feel, right? Like that's the motivating factor in anyone getting off the couch to do something, is a feeling, right? Like you could think about something all day. You think about taking out the garbage all day long, but what gets you off the couch to get the garbage out of the trash can is a feeling that you should do this now. Right.
Yeah. And if I wait until I think I should feel better to do that, I'm never going to do it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I hear people say that about this work, this step work stuff. Well, I should feel a little bit better before I do that. Really? If you think that, you're never going to do it.
Yeah.
Or I think I should be ready to have kids. Like I need to, like you're never going to have kids.
Yeah. That's another interesting. It's like we set up our own self-sabotage, right? Like these ways to, we erect hurdles to jump over first.
Right.
You know, yeah. Were you going to read something?
Yeah, I wanted to share. There's a thing here that um, um, I didn't want to be rude, but he
No.
says, um, it says, there's this chapter in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous that it's called We Agnostics. And oftentimes people who already have a faith and they come into AA, they'll skip over this. They won't read it, but I think it's a mistake because there's so much in here that that I can be agnostic on any given day, really, based on my actions, right? If I'm complaining about how my life is going and whatever, it's like I'm kind of being agnostic because maybe God is already working on it. And I'm really saying, well, I think I know better, God, but whatever. So there's this thing that says, we found too that we had been worshipers. What a state of mental gooseflesh that used to bring on. Have we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves? And then, with a better motive, have we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or the flower? Who of us had not loved something or somebody? How much of these feelings, these loves, these worships have to do with pure reason? Little or nothing, we saw at last. Were not these things the tissue out of which our lives were constructed? Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? It was impossible to say we had no capacity for faith or love or worship. In one form or another, we had been living by faith and little else. I love that because it's like, you can't, like, and then the logic of love, it's like, or I like this example, like, I can't tell you exactly why this particular song speaks to me in a certain way it does. It would be silly for me to say it's those chords and how they are and what chords they are.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's so much deeper than that. Let's just ride the wave, and share it with others.
Yeah. It's funny that I also watched recently Russell Brand talking with Ricky Gervais.
Okay.
And Ricky Gervais said at one point, because they were talking, because Russell Brand is spiritual and Ricky Gervais is an atheist,
Right.
He said, well, really, I'm agnostic because I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if there's a God. And I don't know if there isn't one.
Right.
And I personally think that is, I like that actually a lot. I'm not saying that. What am I?
Oh, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I think it's healthier than saying, I know that this exact thing is the way that God is.
Thank you.
Right. Because to me, that's a little more, I can work with somebody who doesn't know what they believe.
Yeah.
Like it's so difficult to work with somebody who knows exactly what it is and you can't tell me otherwise and I can't work with you.
Yeah.
And, okay, then you go do you. I'm happy you're doing it. And God will work with you wherever you are, and we're just not there yet.
Yeah.
But and I believe that's 100% true.
Yeah.
And it may not look how I want it to look, how I want God to look, but I don't know.
Yeah, but what do we know? Like, like I say to people, the only thing I really know is that God is good. That's all I really know. And the rest of it is a mystery to me. Like, and I'm fine with that. Like I'm less prone to fabrication if I can say I don't know than if I say I do know. Because then I'm going to fabricate something. I'm going to manufacture something to support that claim, right? Because honestly, I don't know, And then the longer I, walk this walk, the more I realize that it's not any one thing, it's all things. It's always all things. Like, we're just so complex. Like, you know, there are many reasons why we do things. There are many things that we are saying when we are talking to someone. There are many assumptions that we have about the world and others, and they're all caught up in memories and the weather and whether we had our coffee in the morning or not, what kind of medication we're on. Like, there's just so many things going on all the time.
Yeah.
All the time,
Mhm.
So yeah.
That's why I really like the estuary idea. I think that I'm really drawn to that. There's so much healing that can take place there, and there's enough people, I think, that are practicing it where, I mean, if we want the church to heal, I think that this is one of the great tools that could be used.
I think so too. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So it's really cool, and what a cool thing to be a part of. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of sounds like a good place to land the plane.
Totally. That was wonderful. Thanks for having this discussion with me. I hope we get to do it again.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it again. I don't know how to stop the recording. Oh, here we go.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Okay, there we go.
It's still going.